Far above the tallest mountains, hidden beyond the familiar constellations, flows a river you cannot see with your eyes, only with your dreams. It is called the Sky's secret river, a stream of silver light winding through the fabric of the night. Its waters are not made of rain, but of stardust, moonlight, and the gentle hum of the universe itself. Tonight, you are invited to drift upon this celestial current. As your eyes grow heavy, imagine stepping into a small wooden boat carved from the heart of an ancient tree. The air around you glows with soft blue light, and the water beneath reflects infinite galaxies. With each breath, the river carries you further from the noise of the waking world, deeper into the quiet truth of the night. The river knows where you need to go. Past shores lined with glowing flowers, under bridges woven from comet trails, and through valleys where time itself sleeps. Somewhere ahead, the journey will dissolve into a peaceful dream, and when you awaken, you will remember only the feeling of safety, stillness, and wonder. The first glimpse of the river. It was just after midnight when the world seemed to pause. The wind softened, the waves far below stilled, and the stars brightened as if leaning closer to listen. You stood at the edge of a quiet cliff, your breath slow and steady. Above you, the Milky Way stretched wide, but tonight, it looked different. Running through the heart of the sky was a glowing path, winding like a silver ribbon. It shimmered faintly, flowing as if it were alive. You blinked, thinking it must be your imagination, but the ribbon swirled gently, catching the light of the moon. Then you heard it, a sound softer than the whisper of waves, yet deeper than the hum of the earth. It was the sky's secret river, calling to you. Each note seemed to reach into your heart, pulling you toward its light. A warm breeze wrapped around you, and for a moment, you felt weightless. It was as if the night itself wanted to lift you from the ground and carry you upward. Somewhere deep inside, you knew, once you stepped into that current, nothing would ever be the same. The invitation of the night. The sound grew clearer, like the slow rhythm of a distant drum, yet made not by any human hands. It was the heartbeat of the sky itself. The stars seemed to sway in time with it, their gentle light pulsing as though they, too, were breathing in harmony. You stepped back from the cliff and glanced behind you. The world you knew, trees, hills, the familiar dark, felt small now, as if it belonged to a different lifetime. Ahead, the glowing river bent and curved across the heavens, beckoning with an irresistible pull. A faint mist rose from the ground at your feet, spiraling upward toward the night. It carried the scent of rain on dry soil, mixed with something else, something sweet, like flowers that bloom only when no one is watching. In the mist, shapes began to form, outlines of wings, lanterns, and pathways leading toward the sky. And then came the voice. It wasn't loud. In fact, it was barely more than a thought brushing against your mind. Come. Used one word, yet it carried the warmth of 1,000 sunsets and the depth of 1,000,000 oceans. You felt your heart slow, your shoulders loosen, and your eyelids grow heavier, as if the night was gently removing the weight you had carried all day. A narrow staircase of starlight appeared in front of you, each step glowing faintly under your feet. It led upward, not into the air, but into something far more delicate, the space between reality and dreams. With one deep breath, you placed your foot on the first step. Walking the stairs of starlight. The moment your foot touched the first glowing step, the air around you seemed to hum. It wasn't the music exactly, more like the echo of a melody you had once known, perhaps in a dream, perhaps in a lifetime you no longer remember. The step beneath you was warm, yet softer than anything solid, as though it was made from condensed moonlight. Slowly, you took another step. Each one seemed to dissolve behind you as soon as your weight left it, so that only the way forward remained. You felt no fear, only a strange, quiet certainty that wherever this path led, it was meant for you alone. The higher you climbed, the more the world below changed. The dark trees blurred into gentle shapes, the horizon curved like the edge of a great bowl, and the ocean became a sheet of glass reflecting the entire sky. The scent of the earth faded, replaced by something cool and fresh, the fragrance of clouds before they released their rain. Thin, tiny sparks began drifting around you, like fireflies made of crystal. They danced in spirals, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they were guiding you toward something. When one brushed past your cheek, you felt a tingle, like a memory trying to resurface. You remembered standing in a meadow as a child, reaching for the first snowflake of winter. And then the image faded, replaced by the present, where starlight fell around you in a gentle cascade. Above you, the river of light widened. It was no longer just a ribbon, it was a vast, flowing expanse, twisting and turning through constellations. You could see shapes forming within it, outlines of ancient ships, giant whales made of nebulae, and bridges connecting one galaxy to another. The sight made your breath catch, not from fear, but from the overwhelming beauty of it all. Somewhere in the distance, a faint structure shimmered in the current. At first, it looked like a cluster of stars, but as you climbed closer, you saw the silhouette of a grand archway, tall, luminous, and carved entirely from light. Its surface rippled gently, as if it were woven from threads of silver. Your hand reached out instinctively. The moment your fingers touched the arch, you felt a pulse, a living, warm heartbeat within the light itself. It was as if the universe was acknowledging you, welcoming you. The heartbeat matched your own, and for a moment, the two became one. Then the arch began to open. Not like a door swinging outward, but like a veil dissolving into mist. Beyond it lay a realm that defied every rule of the waking world, skies of shifting colors, rivers flowing both upward and downward, mountains that floated in the air like drifting islands. And somewhere, just faintly, the same voice as before whispered. You have finally come. The bridge of quiet light. The staircase of starlight led you higher than you ever thought possible. Each step was warm beneath your feet, not like stone or wood, but like holding a sunbeam in your hands. The air shifted with every movement upward, it no longer smelled of earth and grass, but of something softer, keener, like the first breath after a long rain. Above you, the glowing ribbon you had seen earlier revealed itself more clearly. It was not simply hanging in the sky, it was a river, flowing gently without wind, its waters made entirely of light. And across it, connecting one side to another, was a bridge that seemed to be woven from threads of pure moonlight. It swayed slightly, as though alive, responding to your presence. You stepped onto the bridge and felt the hum beneath your feet. It was as if the structure itself had a pulse, slow, steady, reassuring. Every footstep made the light shimmer around you, rippling outward into the night. The stars above bent closer, as if curious to see who was walking here. Halfway across, you paused. The river beneath you was alive with movement, yet silent. Shapes formed in its light, whales swimming through the glow, ancient forests swaying, entire worlds spinning within the current. You realized this was no ordinary river. It was the memory of the universe itself, carrying fragments of every story ever told, every life ever lived. Then, from the far end of the bridge, you saw a figure waiting. Wrapped in flowing garments that seemed made of mist and stars, they raised a hand in greeting. Even from this distance, you felt a calm so deep that it reached into your bones. "You become," the figure said, their voice carrying across the bridge without sound, as if the words had been placed directly into your heart. And you knew, the journey had only just begun. The Keeper of Tides. As you stepped off the bridge of quiet light, the world around you shifted again. The air grew cooler, tasting faintly of salt and something ancient, like the breath of a deep cavern. Beneath your feet, the ground was smooth and pale, reflecting the glow from the luminous river behind you. Each step echoed softly, not in the air, but inside your own mind, as though this place was not part of the physical world. The figure you had seen now stood clearly before you. Their hair shimmered like strands of silver sea foam, drifting and curling as though underwater. Their eyes, they were not simply eyes, but twin pools of deep ocean blue, holding the reflection of countless moons. Around their wrists and ankles, bands of coral and pearl pulsed gently with light. They smiled, and the movement felt older than time itself. "I am the keeper of tides," they said, though their lips barely moved. The words reached you in a way that bypassed sound entirely, settling directly into your heart. Few crossed the bridge. Even fewer are ready to see what lies beyond. Beneath them stretched a shore unlike any you had ever known. The waves there were made not of water but of shifting constellations. Each crest broke into sprays of stardust that hung in the air, refusing to fall. The sound they made was not a crash, but a low, endless hum, the kind that could lull an entire world into sleep. The keeper gestured toward the horizon. "This is the shore of eternal tides. Every wave here marks the turning of an age. If you listen closely, you will hear the rise and fall of forgotten worlds." You closed your eyes and listened. It was true. Within the rhythm of the tides, you heard cities being born and fading into dust. You heard laughter from lives long gone, the flutter of wings that would never take flight again, the deep sigh of mountains as they crumbled back into the earth. And within it all, there was peace, not the peace of stillness, but the peace of knowing that everything had its place in the great turning. The keeper leaned closer, their voice softer now. "Beyond this shore is the path of stars. But the way is hidden, and only revealed to those who understand the tedious song. Do you wish to hear it?" The choice lingered in the air, heavy yet gentle. The stardust waves seemed to pause, waiting for your answer. The song beneath the waves. You nodded without hesitation. The keeper's expression softened, as if they had been waiting for this answer far longer than you could comprehend. "Then listen, not with your ears, but with the part of you that existed before you were born," they whispered. The tide moved closer, its shimmering edge kissing the smooth shore. You felt the coolness of it not on your skin, but deep in your chest. The waves swelled, and in their motion, the constellations shifted, rearranging themselves into patterns you had never seen, maps of forgotten galaxies, portraits of beings that may never have walked this earth, spirals of stars that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a heartbeat older than the sea itself. At first, there was only the hum. But as you stood still, letting the starlight tide wash over your senses, the hum unfolded into layers, low, deep notes like the rolling of a planet through space, midtones that shimmered like crystal bells far away, and high, almost invisible whispers, as if entire civilizations were speaking all at once in a language made of light. Your thoughts began to slow, melting into the tedious rhythm. The keeper's voice drifted through it, now blending with the song itself. Every being has a tide within them. A rise, a fall. The pull of dreams, the return to silence. If you follow this current, it will take you to the path of stars. You glanced down. Where your feet met the shore, the stardust water began to swirl around them, forming delicate streams of light that called up your legs like gentle vines. It was not frightening, it was as if the sea itself recognized you, tracing the story of your existence from the moment you first opened your eyes to the moment you would close them again. The keeper extended their hand. You took it, feeling the pulse of tides within their grasp. Slowly, they began to walk along the shore, each step creating ripples in the constellations underfoot. You followed, feeling as though each movement pulled you deeper into the song, until you were no longer entirely certain if you were walking on solid ground or drifting through a dream that had no edges. Ahead, the sky darkened, not with storm clouds, but with the dense gathering of stars. Somewhere in that darkness, something awaited, a doorway, perhaps, or an entire ocean made of night. The keeper stopped and looked at you, their gaze 1,000 tides in motion. The song will guide you now. But remember, not all who follow it are ready for what lies beyond. And with that, the stardust waves surged higher, wrapping you in their shimmering embrace, carrying you forward toward the unknown. The doorway of tides. The waves did not push you back, they carried you forward. It was a strange sensation, like walking through air that had turned liquid, each step both effortless and infinite. The stardust water shimmered up to your knees now, leaving no wetness, only a faint tingling warmth that spread through your bones. Above you, the night sky seemed alive, not just with stars but with entire rivers of light streaming from horizon to horizon. The constellations were shifting again, but now they moved in ways that made your heart race, spiraling patterns that seemed to respond to your own breathing. When you inhaled, the spirals expanded, when you exhaled, they drew inward, as though you were part of some vast, cosmic heartbeat. The keeper walked a few steps ahead, leaving trails of light in the air that hung for several seconds before fading. Their voice was low but carried effortlessly over the sound of the tide. This sea is not water. It is memory, they said, glancing back at you. Every drop here holds the echo of something long past. That is why it sings. You tilted your head, listening again to the layered song beneath the waves. Now, you could make out distinct threads within it, laughter like wind through tall grass, the slow creak of wooden ships that no longer existed, the faint rustle of pages turning in a book that had been lost centuries ago, all of it wove together, forming a tapestry of sound that felt impossibly familiar, though you could not place why. Why does it feel like I've been here before, you asked, your voice sounding smaller than you expected. The keeper paused. Their eyes reflected not the sky above, but something deeper, a shifting, infinite expanse. Because you have. Every soul comes to the sea of memory before they are born, and again before they leave. Most forget the first visit. A few remember the second. The words sank into you like pebbles dropped into still water, sending ripples through your thoughts. If this was true, then perhaps you were walking towards something that had always been waiting for you. You walked on. The water deepened, but you did not sink. Beneath the shimmering surface, you began to see shapes, arches, pillars, and vast stone structures that seemed to glow faintly from within. Some were whole, others broken and leaning like ancient ruins. And then, ahead, you saw it, a doorway. It was not built of stone or wood, but of pure, liquid light, framed by two towering columns made entirely of swirling constellations. The doorway stood alone in the middle of the starlit sea, and though there was nothing physically blocking your way, you felt the weight of its presence pressing gently on your chest, like the moment before a deep breath. The keeper stopped just short of it. Beyond this door, you will see what the tide wishes to show you. But you must understand, the sea will not lie, and it will not protect you from the truth. A faint hum vibrated in your ears, growing louder with every heartbeat. The doorway seemed to breathe, inhaling and exhaling light. You took a step closer, and the stardust water curled upward, forming spirals that reached toward your hands like curious tendrils. When you stepped through, the keeper added softly, you may find what you've been seeking, or something you did not know you had lost. The song of the sea swelled, no longer distant but all around you, inside you. You placed your hand on the edge of the glowing frame, feeling it pulse like the skin of some living creature. The moment you stepped forward, the world dissolved into pure light. The hall of forgotten horizons. The light did not fade, it unfolded. At first, it was blinding, a storm of silver and gold threads rushing past you in every direction, as if you were being pulled through the very veins of the universe. There was no up or down, no sense of ground beneath your feet, only the sensation of floating inside a current older than time itself. Gradually, the brilliance softened, and shapes began to emerge. You were standing in a vast hall so immense that the ceiling dissolved into a mist of drifting constellations. Columns of translucent crystal lined the space, each one filled with swirling fragments of memory, some sharp and bright, others dim and flickering like dying embers. The floor beneath you wasn't a solid stone, but a calm pool of perfectly still water. When you stepped forward, it didn't ripple, it reflected. Yet the reflection didn't match your movement. Instead of showing the present, it displayed moments you couldn't quite remember, laughing under a tree with people whose faces were blurred, standing on the deck of a ship beneath unfamiliar stars, holding an ancient book with trembling hands. The keeper appeared beside you, though you hadn't seen them enter. "This is the Hall of Forgotten Horizons," they said quietly. "Every choice, every dream, every path you turned away from, this is where they rest." You gazed at one of the crystal columns. Inside it, you saw a version of yourself standing on a cliff, the ocean roaring below. You were older, stronger, your eyes full of something you couldn't name, resolve, perhaps, or sorrow. In your hand was a key made of black metal. The image flickered, then was gone. "Why am I saying this?" you asked. "Because the tide wants you to remember," the keeper replied. "The door you passed through does not show what is, it shows what was meant to be." Your heart began to race. You looked to another column and saw yourself walking through a forest of impossible colors, the trees humming with low, resonant music. You reached out in the vision, touching one of the glowing trunks, only for the scene to vanish again before your fingers could connect. The further you walked into the hall, the more intense the visions became. In one, you stood at the center of a city made of glass, the sky above split into ribbons of green and violet. In another, you knelt beside someone you knew you loved, though their features were lost to shadow. It was overwhelming, this flood of unlived lives. They clung to you, whispering not in words but in sensations, warmth, loss, longing, joy. Finally, at the very end of the hall, there was a single column, taller and brighter than the rest. Its light spilled across the still water, painting it in gold. Inside this one, you saw yourself, not in another place, not in another time, but here, now. You were standing in the starlit sea, your hand on the keeper's shoulder, and both of you were looking toward a horizon you could not yet see. "This," the keeper said, their voice softer than the tide, "is the choice you have not yet made." Somewhere in the vast silence, a deep, resonant bell began to toll. And with its sound, the hall started to tremble. The bell that calls across oceans. The sound rolled through the hall of forgotten horizons like a wave through deep water, low, resonant, and impossibly vast. It wasn't just heard, it was felt, thrumming in your chest, vibrating through the floor of still water beneath your feet. The keepers had turned sharply toward the unseen horizon beyond the final column. Their eyes, normally calm as the surface of a moonlit bay, flickered with something you had not seen before, unease. "It's too soon," they whispered, almost to themselves. The bell tolled again, deeper this time, and the crystal columns shuddered. So many of the visions inside them blurred, distorting as if submerged in turbulent water. You saw fleeting images, yourself running down a corridor of light, your hand clutching something small and bright, the ocean rising into the sky like a wall, a single star dimming until it vanished. You turned to the keeper. "What does it mean?" They hesitated, then stepped closer to you, their voice hushed. "It means the sea has remembered your name." The air seemed to grow heavier, pressing against your skin. The shimmering constellations above the hall began to shift, forming patterns you didn't recognize, yet somewhere in your bones, you did know them. The shapes told a story, one older than the hall itself. A story of a promise made between the stars and the sea, and the price for breaking it. The third toll of the bell was the loudest yet. Distime, the water beneath you rippled, just once, but in that ripple you saw an image far clearer than any in the crystal columns. A black ship, its sails torn, drifting in a sea that glowed with its own light. On its deck stood a figure cloaked in shadow, holding the same black metal key they glimpsed before. Their head turned, slowly, and though their face was hidden, you felt the weight of their gaze. "Daybreak coming," the keeper murmured, and the silver mist at the edges of the hall began to churn like storm clouds. A fourth bell struck, and the light in the great column flared, pulling you toward it as if the hall itself wanted to show you something before it was too late. Your hand rose involuntarily, fingers almost touching the crystal. And then, the water under your feet shattered. You fell, not into darkness, but into an ocean made of stars. Drifting through the ocean of stars. There was no sound of falling, only the endless hush of space itself, a silence so deep it felt like it could hold your thoughts still. You floated weightless, suspended in a vast ocean where the water shimmered like liquid night, scattered with countless stars. Each star pulsed gently, as if breathing in time with the slow, steady rhythm of your own heartbeat. The light was not harsh, it wrapped around you in a warm glow, softer than moonlight, softer even than memory. When you moved your hand, the starlight rippled like water, spreading out in concentric waves until it touched the distant constellations. The ripples made the stars sing, not with voices, but with tones so pure they felt like they came from inside you, vibrating in the quietest corners of your mind. You drifted deeper, letting the current of starlight carry you. Shapes began to form in the glow, a silver whale gliding past with constellations mapped across its back, a school of luminous fish darting around you, leaving trails of light like shooting stars, and, far above, the faint outline of a city that seemed to be made of moonbeams. The water, or whatever this strange cosmic sea was, held no chill, no weight. It felt like being wrapped in the comfort of a dream you never wanted to wake from. Somewhere, far in the distance, the bell tolled again. Distime, it was not alarming. It was an invitation, calling you gently onward. You let the current turn you, guiding you toward the sound. The stars around you began to align, forming a pathway of light stretching endlessly ahead. And as you followed, you realized, the path wasn't leading through the ocean. It was leading up, toward a place where sea and sky became one. Where the sea meets the sky. The pathway of stars rose before you like a staircase woven from moonlight. Each step was not a solid stone but a shimmering ripple, soft under your feet, yet carrying you higher without effort. Below, the ocean of stars glimmered inside, its surface shifting in slow, hypnotic waves. Above, the sky was no longer a ceiling, it was alive, breathing in hues of deep sapphire, lavender, and midnight silver. As you climbed, the boundary between sea and sky began to blur. The water beneath your feet thinned until you could see the constellations drifting below, and the air ahead shimmered with the same fluid glow. It was as if the universe itself had forgotten which part was ocean and which was heaven, folding them gently into one. You reached a crest where the air grew thick with a soft, fragrant mist. It smelled faintly of night-blooming flowers, the kind that only open when the world is quiet. The mist curled around your fingers like silk, and when you brushed it aside, the view opened before you. Stretching out in every direction was a horizon unlike any you had ever seen. There was no line separating sea from sky, just a vast expanse of light and color, swirling slowly, like two great beings dancing in perfect harmony. The stars drifted here too, some floating low as though resting on the surface, others hanging just within reach above your head. You stepped forward and felt your toes touch both water and air at once, cool and warm, dense and light. It was a sensation that made your heart slow, as if time itself had paused to let you savor it. In the distance, shapes emerged, towering crystalline arches that seemed to be made from frozen waves, their surfaces refracting starlight into rainbows that shimmered in the mist. A gentle wind, if it could be called wind, moved through this place, carrying whispers that felt like they came from the stars themselves. They didn't speak in words, but in feelings, peace, safety, belonging. It was as if this meeting place of sea and sky was a secret the universe kept for those who wandered far enough to find it. And then, you saw her. Standing at the edge of one of the crystalline arches was a figure bathed in starlight, her gown flowing like the tide. She did not move, but the moment your eyes met, you felt as though she had been waiting for you for a very, very long time. The guardian of the tides. She stood perfectly still, her silhouette framed by the shimmering arch of crystal behind her. Every movement of the sea and sky seemed to slow in her presence, as though the universe itself bowed in quiet respect. Her gown, woven from threads of liquid silver, drifted in an unseen current, each fold catching the glow of nearby stars. You took a tentative step forward, and the sound beneath your feet was neither splash nor echo, it was a note, pure and resonant, as if the path itself sang in greeting. The woman's gaze met yours, and though her eyes held no pupils, they seemed infinite, filled with a soft luminescence like distant galaxies. When she finally spoke, her voice was not sound in the way you knew it, it was a vibration you felt deep in your chest, gentle yet powerful, like the hum of the earth. You have walked far, she said, each word floating between the waves and the wind. And you have crossed the threshold where the realms of water and sky embrace. You noticed her hands, lone, graceful fingers cupping something that glowed faintly. As she stepped closer, the light revealed itself to be a small sphere, pulsing softly, almost like a heartbeat. The glow was neither cold nor warm, it simply existed, alive in its own quiet way. This, she continued, is the heart of the tides. It is the breath of this world, the reason the stars rest upon the water and the sea dreams of the sky. Few are chosen to see it, and fewer still are invited to hold it. She extended her hand toward you. The sphere hovered slightly above her palm, as if gravity was a suggestion rather than a rule here. A deep, serene calm washed over you, not the calm of stillness, but the calm of being exactly where you were meant to be. The sound of the sea faded, replaced by a low, distant hum, like the pulse of creation itself. Will you take it? She asked, tilting her head slightly. For in your hands, it may awaken the path ahead, or change it forever. You reached out, your fingertips brushing against the glowing surface, and in that instant, the world around you began to ripple, as though reality itself had taken a breath. When the heart awoke. The moment your fingertips touched the heart of the tides, it was as if every droplet in the ocean turned its gaze toward you. The spirit's surface was impossibly smooth, yet alive, like holding a raindrop that refused to fall. It pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves, each beat sending a faint shimmer through the air. Then, the first tremor began. It wasn't a violent quake but a deep, resonant thrum, like the ocean remembering an ancient song. The woman, the guardian, stepped back with a knowing expression. Her silver gown flowed outward as though caught in a wind that did not exist. It hears you, she whispered. It remembers. Before your eyes, the sphere brightened, shifting from pale silver to an opalescent glow, colors spilling across its surface like sunrise reflected on calm water. The hum grew louder, no longer just a sound but a vibration within your bones. Your heartbeat began to sync with it, until you couldn't tell if it was yours or the spirit's. And then, the water beneath the crystal path began to move, not with the tide, but upward. Thin streams of seawater curled toward the sky, spiraling like ribbons of glass. They formed shapes, whales leaping. In silence, stars unfolding like petals, entire constellations drifting through liquid air. With each breath, the heart projected visions. Ju saw ancient shores where colossal moonshells shimmered under twin suns. Ju glimpsed deep trenches where coral forests glowed with colors no human had ever named. Ju saw storms of light instead of rain, and seas that sang with voices both joyous and sorrowful. The Guardian's voice came again, though it now felt as if it emerged from the very fabric of the world. This is the memory of the tides, their first dream, and their last. Ju hold not just its heart, but its story. Do not lose it. The spirit's glow intensified until it enveloped you entirely. You could no longer see the guardian or the crystal path, only an endless expanse of light, as if you were floating in the first second after the universe was born. And then, you heard it. A whisper, faint but undeniable. We have been waiting for you. The light began to pull you forward, not by e-force, but with the inevitability of a wave returning to shore. You realized that wherever you were going next, it would not be a place you could easily return from. The city above the tides. The light surrounding you softened, shifting from blinding brilliance to a shimmering haze, as if you were waking from a dream only to find another dream waiting. The ocean, once beneath your feet, now stretched endlessly below like a vast sapphire mirror. And floating far above it, suspended in the very air, was a city unlike anything human hands had ever built. Its towers curved like seashell spirals, their surfaces glistening with a pearly sheen. Bridges arched between them in graceful sweeps, woven from strands of silver light. The entire city shimmered faintly, as though it were made from water held in shape by some ancient magic. Beneath its transparent streets, schools of luminous fish swam lazily through liquid avenues, their glowing fins tracing ribbons of blue and gold. You realized with awe that the city was alive. The buildings pulsed faintly, the way coral breathes with the tide. The air smelled faintly of salt and jasmine, carrying a constant, low hum, like the deep song of whales, threaded with the soft tinkling of distant chimes. As you stepped forward, the heart of the tide still in your hands, the city responded. The bridges brightened beneath your feet, lighting your path toward the tallest tower at the center. It seemed to call to you, its spire crowned with a swirling halo of water that never spilled, only danced in a slow spiral. Figures began to appear from the soft mist, tall, elegant beings draped in robes that flowed like liquid silver. Deities shone with the deep blues and greens of the ocean depths. They carried no weapons, only slender staffs tipped with shells that glowed softly. They moved with the quiet dignity of those who have lived many centuries and seen many tides. One stepped forward, bowing slightly. Bearer of the heart, they said, their voice flowing like a calm current, the tide has chosen you. Welcome to Naurea, the city between waves and stars. You followed as they led you through streets that wound around crystalline pools. Beneath the pools, scenes shifted, memories of the sea itself. One showed storms that birthed islands. Another revealed moons rising over black waters lit with living fire. Every step brought you deeper into the city's pulse, until you felt it thrumming through your veins. Finally, you reached the central spire. Its gates opened without a sound, revealing a hall that seemed carved from moonlight. At its center, an immense map of the oceans floated in midair, currents swirling in glowing arcs. Around it, the Tide Council waited, their robes flowing like the slow dance of kelp forests. One of them spoke, their voice carrying the weight of oceans yet to be sailed. The heart brought you here because a change is coming. Waters will rise where they should not, and stars will fall where they must not. You will choose the path of the tides. The words sank into you like stones into deep water. This was not just a journey, it was a calling. The secret of the Tide Council. The great hall of the spire was silent except for the faint sound of the ocean's breath, as if the sea itself leaned close to hear what would be said. The Tide Council stood in a perfect circle around the glowing ocean map, their eyes reflecting not just the present, but centuries of memory. Your guide, the silver-robed being who had first welcomed you, stepped forward. The glow of the heart of the tides in your hand seemed to intensify, casting ripples of light across the walls. Before you can choose the path of the tides, they began, you must know the truth that has been hidden from the surface world for millennia. The map shifted. The oceans faded to black, and in their place, a vast web of glowing lines appeared, currents of light that linked not only seas but the sky itself. You saw stars. Mirrored in the water, and water mirrored in the stars. Each point of light pulsed, connected by shimmering threads. The sea and the sky are not separate, the guide continued. They are one great tide, flowing endlessly between worlds. When the moon pulls the water, it also stirs the stars. And when a star falls, it changes the heartbeat of the ocean. They gestured toward one point on the map, a glowing star pulsing faintly. This is the star of Kelowna. Its fall has already begun. When it touches the ocean, the tides will rise higher than ever known. Lands will sink, islands will vanish, and the deep will claim what was once the shore. But they stepped closer to you, their gaze locking with yours. If the heart of the tides is placed where the four great currents meet, the star's fall can be guided. The waters will not destroy, they will renew. Coral forests will bloom where there is only sand. Shores will rise higher and stronger. And the bond between sky and sea will be restored. You felt the weight of their words settle in your chest. This was no mere journey to explore beautiful places, this was a quest that would decide the fate of both ocean and starlight. One of the other council members, a tall figure with hair like flowing kelp, spoke in a voice deep as a valley's song. But know this, many will try to take the heart from you. Those who see only power in its light. Some may dwell in the deepest trenches, older than storms. Others sail the winds between worlds. To succeed, you must walk the path of stillness, for the heart responds not to strength, but to peace. The glowing map faded, replaced once more by the swirling image of the living ocean. Your journey begins at first light, the guide said. From here, you will sail to the edge of currents, where the waters choose their direction for the entire world. As the council bowed in unison, the great gates opened again, revealing the city bathed in silver moonlight. You stepped out, the heart warm in your hands, and felt the weight of both sea and sky on your shoulders. This was no longer just a voyage. This was destiny, and destiny was calling. The edge of currents. The next morning, the horizon was washed in pale gold, the kind of light that feels older than the world itself. The city still slumbered under its shimmering domes, but you were already awake, standing at the arbor's edge where crystal bridges arched over slow-moving canals. The heart of the tides rested against your chest, its gentle pulse in rhythm with your heartbeat. Your guide, now dressed in a robe the color of dawn seas, waited beside a vessel unlike any ship you had ever seen. It was carved from a single shell of an enormous moon pearl, its surface glowing faintly in the light. Silken sails shimmered with patterns of constellations, shifting as the wind touched them. Beneath the hull, luminous fins stirred the water, not wooden oars, but living currents shaped to carry the ship wherever it willed. This, your guide said softly, is the Tide Weaver. It will take you to the edge of currents. As you stepped aboard, the vessel responded like a living thing, its surface warming beneath your feet, the sails sighing open as though greeting an old friend. The harbor fell away, replaced by the vast expanse of ocean, calm as glass. For a time, the journey felt dreamlike. Schools of silverfish swam alongside the Tide Weaver, their scales catching the light like scattered stars. Bats of pale blue dolphins arched from the waves, releasing chimes instead of whistles, each note vibrating in the air like drops of music. Hours passed, but the water began to change. The color deepened from sapphire to a shifting green-black, and the air carried a hum, faint at first, then growing, like the sound of an enormous heartbeat beneath the waves. Your guide came to stand beside you. We are nearing the place where all waters decide their path. Ahead, the horizon fractured. The sea no longer moved as one endless surface, instead, you saw vast rivers within the ocean itself, bands of water, each flowing in a different direction, some toward faraway poles, others toward equatorial warmth. They were separated not by land, but by invisible walls of energy, as if the sea had drawn its own lines. In the center of it all stood a colossal pillar of water, spiraling upward into the clouds. Lightning danced within it, though the air was silent. Around its base, the currents tangled and unwound, creating whirlpools that spun without end. That is the heart's first trial, your guide whispered. To pass through the spiraling column without being turned back. The edge of currents will test whether you move with the flow of the world, or against it. As the tideweaver drew nearer, you could feel the pull of the currents tugging at the ship from every side. The sails rippled with the strain, and the vessel groaned as though resisting an unseen force. You tightened your grip on the heart of the tides. It pulsed faster now, as if it knew where you were. And deep inside, you felt a strange certainty, this was only the beginning. The column of water loomed ahead, so tall it seemed to pierce the sky. And somewhere within its spinning embrace, you sensed a doorway waiting for you to find it. The spiral gate. The tideweaverspa cut through the churning waters, and the great spiral rose before you like a living mountain. From up close, it was even more overwhelming. The walls of water curved upward and inward, twisting into the clouds, their surfaces flashing with streaks of lightning and sudden, glowing shapes that looked almost like faces peering out from within. The hum in the air deepened, sinking into your bones. The heart of the tides pressed against your chest, warm and insistent, almost urging you forward. Your guide, hand steady on the living tiller, spoke in a tone barely louder than the water's roar. Inside the spiral gate, you must find the true current. Without it, you will be lost in the maze forever. You leaned over the side of the ship. The waters here didn't behave like ordinary waves, they rose in smooth, vertical walls, flowing in opposite directions at the same time. Threads of pure light wound through them like veins, each a possible path, but some ended in whirlpools that spun down into blackness. Others shot upward into impossible heights, vanishing into mist. The tideweaver entered the spiral. Immediately, the world changed. The sound of the ocean became muffled, replaced by a deep, resonant hum, as if you had stepped inside a giant seashell. Strange bioluminescent creatures swam past the transparent walls, their long, ribbon-like bodies twisting in unison with the spiral's turn. You reached out instinctively, and the heart of the tides reacted. From its center, faint streams of light extended, touching the walls of water. Wherever the light met a thread in the current, that thread flared brightly. Some glowed a warm gold, others a cold blue. Your guide's voice broke the silence. Choose the golden path, and you will move forward. Choose the wrong one. The ship suddenly lurched, as if struck by an invisible force. A massive shadow swam into view ahead, its outline so large it seemed to fill the tunnel. The light within the spiral shifted, revealing a creature with eyes like glowing moons, its body half fish, half storm-cloud. The guardian of the spiral. Its voice wasn't heard, it was felt, deep in your chest. Bearer of the heart, prove you can move with the sea's will, or be cast into the depths. The tideweaver slowed to a halt. Before you, 3 golden threads of current shimmered, each leading in a different direction. Somewhere in this watery maze led the way forward, but the wrong choice could mean being trapped in the spiral forever. The guardian's gaze burned into you, waiting. The spiral wall spun slowly, as though impatient. You tightened your hand over the heart and took a deep breath. The test had begun. The test of currents. The guardian's gaze was as heavy as the ocean's weight itself. It loomed ahead, its vast, shimmering form barely distinguishable from the swirling water around it. The spiral's walls pulsed with light, like a great heartbeat in sync with your own. Somewhere deep within, you could feel the heart of the tides responding, its warmth intensifying as if sensing both danger and destiny. The 3 golden threads ahead gleamed temptingly, each one flowing in a different direction. They were not mere streams of light, they carried with them subtle vibrations, whispers too faint to hear with the ears, but present in your bones. The first thread curved sharply upward, disappearing into the clouds of mist. The second bent downward into a dim, shadowed chasm. The third wove forward in a slow, steady spiral, neither rushing nor stalling. Choose, the guardian's voice reverberated, not in the air, but inside your mind. Only the path that dances with the true current will let you pass. The others will feed the spiral forever. Your guide said nothing, but you noticed their hands had left the tiller entirely. This was your choice alone. You closed your eyes. The Tidewaver's deck creaked beneath your feet, and the sound of the water filled your ears. At first, all you heard was the relentless roar of the spiral's pull. Then, slowly, other sounds emerged, the distant echo of whale song, the faint click of unseen crustaceans, and, beneath it all, a single, resonant hum. The hum matched the rhythm of your heartbeat. Opening your eyes, you followed the sensation, not with sight, but with feeling. You stepped to the seep's edge, the heart of the tides glowing against your palm. Its light spilled outward into the spiral wall, where the 3 currents awaited your decision. The upward path flickered brighter, almost demanding attention, but its vibration felt restless, like a bird trapped in a cage. The downward path carried a deep, thundering pulse that felt powerful but wrong, like the dragging pull of an undertow that would never release you. Only the third path, the steady spiral, felt alive in a way the others didn't. Its pulse was gentle but unyielding, patient yet unstoppable. It reminded you of the ocean's eternal tides, never hurried, never late, always returning. I choose the spiral, you said softly, but the words seemed to echo endlessly. The guardian's eyes flared like twin suns. The other 2 currents shattered into streams of light, dissolving into the walls. The chosen thread thickened, wrapping around the ship like a protective ribbon. The hum in the water deepened, and for a moment, you felt as if the spiral itself had paused to acknowledge your choice. The guardian dipped its massive head, the gesture both approving and ancient. You have heard the Sea's voice. Few can. Fewer still listen. The ribbon of light pulled the tideweaver forward. The spiral wall stretched and twisted, and suddenly, you were moving faster than any wind could push a sail. The hum became a symphony, threads of gold flashing by in every direction. Ships swam alongside the ship, long-forgotten sea spirits, each bowing their heads as you passed. Then, without warning, the spiral ended. You burst out into open ocean, but not the one you had left behind. Above you, the night sky shimmered with constellations you did not recognize. The sea glowed faintly, its surface alive with bioluminescent patterns that moved like living maps. The guardian's voice lingered in your mind one last time. Beyond the spiral lies the sea without shore. Your journey begins anew. And with that, the vast shape dissolved into mist, leaving only the endless horizon ahead. The sea without shore. The horizon here was unlike any you had ever known. It was not a clean line where ocean met sky, it was infinite, a seamless blend of water and starlight, as though the 2 had melted into one. There was no edge, no hint of land in any direction. The very idea of shore felt like a forgotten world. The sea without shore breathed differently. Waves did not crash here, they flowed like molten glass, their surfaces smooth yet alive, carrying ripples of soft, luminous colors, emerald, violet, silver, that shifted with the rhythm of some unseen force. Each crest glimmered with delicate strands of bioluminescence, forming shapes and patterns that seemed almost deliberate, like symbols from a language older than time. Above, the constellations moved. Not in the slow crawl of the familiar night sky, but in graceful arcs and spirals, rearranging themselves as if speaking to one another in light. So many stars glowed in hues no human eye should be able to see, yet you perceived them clearly, colors that seemed to echo in your mind more than in your vision. A breeze whispered across the deck, but it carried no scent of salt. Instead, it smelled faintly of petrichor and wildflowers, as though this place borrowed fragrances from worlds far away. You felt the air itself hum against your skin, and the heart of the tides in your hand responded with a low, steady warmth. Your irises were wide, reflecting the strange light of the sea. "We have crossed into the realm of living waters," they murmured, almost in reverence. "Here, the ocean remembers every voyage, every ship, every dream cast upon it." You leaned over the Tideweber's rail, staring into the depths. The water was impossibly clear, yet impossibly deep. At first, you saw nothing, just endless darkness below. But then shapes began to emerge, colossal forms gliding silently far beneath the surface. Some may look like creatures of the deep you had read about, whales, giant rays, shimmering schools of fish, but others were unlike anything in any ocean. Great ribbon-like beings, wider than cities, moved with elegance through the depths, their bodies casting waves of light that danced up to the surface. Then something happened that made your breath catch. The sea itself began to rise, not in a wave, but in vast, translucent columns that reached toward the sky. Within these pillars of water swam memories, faint, ghost-like images of ships from other ages, sailors laughing, storms raging, messages in bottles drifting endlessly. The columns bent toward one another, forming arches of living water over your path. The tideweaver passed beneath one such arch, and in that instant, a flood of whispers filled your ears. They were voices in countless languages, some you recognized, others alien to you, but all carried the same weight, yearning, warning, and wonder. "Listen carefully," your guide said in a hushed tone. "The sea without shore shows us not where we are, but where we are meant to go." And as the arches of water collapsed gently back into the sea, a single glowing path formed ahead, a trail of shimmering currents winding into the infinite horizon. The heart of the tides pulsed once, as if agreeing, "Follow." A hit did not simply invite you forward, it demanded your surrender. Each thread of light wove itself into the waves, pulling the ocean into a slow, spiraling motion that seemed to lead toward a distant, invisible center. The tideweaver creaked softly beneath your feet, almost as if the ship itself was unsure about entering. The sky above had shifted too. The stars no longer wandered freely, they had aligned into a single sweeping arc, pointing straight ahead like a celestial compass. But the strange thing was, no matter how far you looked, you could not see an end to the glowing current. It wound deeper and deeper into the horizon until it simply vanished into the haze. Your guide stood at the bow, hands clasped tightly around a carved staff. Their expression had grown tense, though they tried to mask it. "The current will test us," they said finally. "It tests everyone." You felt the heart of the tides pulse again, once, twice, then a third time, slower, as if bracing for something. The moment the ship's hull touched the first line of shimmering water, the world shifted. The wind died completely. The sounds of the sea faded. Even your own breathing seemed muffled, as if the ocean had placed you inside a vast, invisible dome. The water here was too smooth, too perfect, like a mirror stretching into forever. Then the trial began. The current beneath the ship surged suddenly, faster than you thought possible, yanking the tideweaver forward like a leaf caught in a reverse grip. The ship tilted slightly, but the pull was steady, not dangerous, yet powerful enough that resisting seemed foolish. The glowing path brightened, flaring with every turn, until the light was almost blinding. And then came the shadows. They emerged from the depths in silence, sleek, dark shapes moving with unnatural speed beneath the glassy surface. At first there were only 2, then 6, then a dozen. Their outlines shifted constantly, sometimes appearing fish-like, sometimes like ribbons of smoke. Every time you blinked, they changed form, as though they were made of water itself. The guide's voice was low and urgent. They are the keepers of the current. They will decide if we are worthy to pass. One of the shapes rose to the surface directly beside you. Its face was featureless except for 2 pale, glowing eyes that fixed on yours. There was no malice in them, only deep, ancient curiosity. It drifted alongside the ship, matching its speed perfectly, and you felt something in your mind shift, as if it were reading you. Another shape rose on the opposite side, then another at the stern, until the tideweaver was surrounded. The heart of the tides burned warmly in your palm, and without thinking, you held it out over the water. The reaction was immediate. The keepers paused. Every one of their glowing eyes turned toward the heart, and the current slowed, not stopped, but slowed, allowing the ship to glide at a calmer pace. Your guide looked at you in astonishment. It accepts you, they whispered. But then, as if to remind you this was still a trial, the current ahead began to split into 3 separate glowing streams, each twisting in a different direction. The keepers slipped silently into each path, waiting. Choose, the guide said. Only one will take us where we need to go. The others will never let us return. And in that breathless moment, the stars above began to shift again, as if they were trying to help you decide. The path of the true tide. The 3 glowing streams ahead glimmered like liquid constellations spilled across the sea. Each one had its own rhythm, one pulsed softly, as though breathing, another flickered like lightning trapped underwater, the third glowed steady, unwavering, almost defiant. The keepers of the current waited silently within each path, their glowing eyes fixed on you. The ocean itself felt suspended in time. Not a wave stirred. Not a breath of wind touched your face. The choice was yours, and the weight of it pressed into your chest. The guide's voice was steady, but you could hear the undercurrent of fear. Remember, only one is the true tide. The others, they'll close around us forever. You tightened your grip on the heart of the tides. It had grown warmer, almost alive in your palm, its pulse syncing with your own heartbeat. Then you noticed something, the stars above didn't simply moving, they were aligning. Slowly, they curved into a spiral that mirrored the glowing currents below. But in that cosmic spiral, one estrella's reflection was missing, as if the stars refused to touch it. Your choice became clear. You pointed toward the path with the breathing pulse, the one whose light expanded and contracted like a living thing. The guide gave a single nod, and with a push of the rudder, the tideweaver drifted into it. At first, nothing happened. The current was gentle, its glow steady, wrapping around the hull like a welcoming embrace. The keepers moved with you, weaving alongside. The sheep, their shapes clearer now, sleek, elongated beings with bodies that shimmered between silver and shadow. One by one, they drew closer, until they swam directly beneath the tideweaver, lifting it slightly as though carrying you forward. Then, as you passed deeper into the current, the true test revealed itself. The water ahead darkened, not from nightfall, but from something rising beneath the surface. A massive, spiraling vortex formed, its center glowing faintly. Instead of pulling you down, it seemed to invite you in. The keeper swam ahead, slipping into the espiral's heart without hesitation. Your guide's voice was almost a whisper. No one sails this far unless the ocean wills it. Hold on. The moment the tide weaver touched the edge of the vortex, everything inverted. The stars above swirled downward. The horizon folded in on itself. You weren't falling, you were sliding, the ship gliding down the spiral as if gravity had been rewritten. Through the spinning glow, you saw glimpses, shapes that looked like towering coral spires reaching into open air, colossal sea creatures drifting in slow motion, and a vast gate of shimmering light waiting at the vortex center. As you neared it, the heart of the tides in your hand began to sing, not in sound, but in pure vibration, matching the rhythm of the current itself. The gate's surface rippled, as though it recognized you, and you realized. This was not just a passage. It was an invitation. The city beneath all tides. The tideweaver slipped through the vortex gate with the grace of a feather drifting into still water. For a brief moment, everything around you turned to silver light, so bright and soft it felt like being wrapped in the heart of a dream. When the glow faded, you gasped. Before you stretched a city so vast it made even the great oceans feel small. Coral towers rose in spirals toward the surface, their tips crowned with glowing shells that pulsed like lanterns. Bridges of woven kelp stretched between them, lined with soft threads of living light. Schools of luminous fish darted through archways, their movements creating shifting patterns across the coral walls, like living murals. This was not ruin, nor relic. This was alive. The water here was warm and clear, carrying the faint scent of salt mingled with something sweet, like blossoms hidden deep beneath the sea. The keepers who had guided you swam ahead, their silvered forms reflecting the city's lights. They moved with purpose, leading you through a wide channel that opened into a central plaza the size of a continent's harbor. In its center rose a colossal structure, a dome made entirely of pearlescent shells, each the size of a ship sail. It shimmered in hues that shifted with every heartbeat, deep sapphire, pale jade, molten gold. Inside it, you could see shapes moving, tall, graceful figures that glowed faintly, as though lit from within. Your guide's voice trembled in awe. This is Lomares. The heart of the ocean's memory. As you drifted closer, you realized the entire city was built to breathe. The coral towers pulsed faintly, drawing in water, then releasing it again in a perfect rhythm, as if the city itself were alive and aware of you. Every surface hummed with energy, low, resonant, almost like a song too deep for human ears. The keepers guided the tideweaver to the plaza's edge. There, dozens of luminous beings emerged from the dome, their robes flowing like sea foam. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, wearing a crown shaped like a breaking wave. They raised their hands in welcome. And though no words were spoken aloud, you heard their voice clearly in your mind. Bearer of the heart, you have come at last. The heart of the tides in your hand glowed so brightly now that you had to squint. The city seemed to lean in toward you, its lights intensifying as if the entire place were holding its breath. Somewhere deep inside, you knew, this was only the beginning. The ocean's first memory. The crowned figure glided forward, their presence both serene and overwhelming, as though the very weight of the tides had taken form. They stopped before you, and the glowing crown upon their head seemed to ripple like real water. You carry the heart of the tides. The voice whispered directly into your thoughts. And so you will see what no landwalker has seen since the dawn. With a slow gesture, they touched the heart in your hands. The world around you dissolved. Suddenly, you were standing, though you felt no ground, at the very bottom of time. The sea here was not the blue you knew, but a luminous green, and the water was warmer, richer, as though it carried the breath of creation itself. Towering kelp forests swayed gently, each frond longer than a ship's mast. Creatures the size of mountains drifted overhead, massive, gentle beings with eyes that burned like suns in the depths. A voice, ancient, vast, seeped through the water. In the beginning, the ocean was not silent. You saw it now, before there were continents, before rivers had names, the sea sang. Not with words, but with vibrations that made the very water dance. From that song, life bloomed, glowing plankton, shells of pearl, coral that reached for the light above. The city you had seen, Numeris, was born of that first music, shaped by hands that were neither fully human nor wholly other. But then, the vision shifted. The song fractured. A shadow moved through the waters, something so large, so formless, it seemed made of the ocean's own darkness. Wherever it drifted, the light dimmed, the coral turned pale, and the song grew weak. The crowned figure's voice returned to you, gentle but heavy with warning. The shadow has not vanished. It sleeps. And soon, it will wake. The vision faded, and you were back in the great plaza of Numeris. Around you, the luminous beings watched silently, their eyes reflecting the same ancient sorrow you now felt in your bones. The crowned figure looked into your eyes. You must learn the song again, Bede, before the shadow rises. And somewhere deep within the city, a low, resonant hum began, like the first note of a melody you had yet to understand. The Chamber of Echoes. The hum was soft at first, almost like the distant call of a whale, but as you focused, it grew richer, weaving through the currents like a guiding thread. It wasn't just sound, it was a feeling, an invitation that pulled at your very core. The crowned figure did not stop you. They only nodded, as if knowing exactly where the heart would lead you. You followed the sound through narrow, coral-lined streets that curved like living rivers. The luminous buildings of Numeris began to fade behind you, replaced by the ancient, untouched parts of the city, structures so old their coral had turned to stone, worn smooth by centuries of waves. At the end of a spiraling path, you reached a towering archway covered in shell engravings. Cymbals glowed faintly as the heart in your hands pulsed, each beat syncing perfectly with the melody. As you stepped forward, the archway dissolved into a shimmering curtain of water, and you passed through without resistance. Inside it was a chamber unlike anything you had seen before. The walls were alive with bioluminescent patterns, shifting like the night sky. At the center floated a great sphere of crystal-clear water, suspended in mid-ocean as if gravity had forgotten it. Within the sphere, glowing threads swirled, twisting together into shapes, waves, creatures, constellations of stars you recognized from the surface. The hum grew louder here, and now it became layered, forming a harmony that made your chest ache with something you couldn't name. A soft voice echoed, not from the chamber, but from within your mind. This is the Chamber of Echoes. Here rests the memory of every wave, every tide, every song the ocean has ever known. And here, Bede, you will learn to sing again. The heart in your hands dissolved into light, streams of it wrapping around you like ribbons. The threads from the sphere reached toward you, curling around your arms and chest, drawing you closer. And then, the walls themselves began to sing. The Song of Tides. The moment the first true note entered you, it was as if the ocean itself had found a voice through your soul. The sound was not loud, it was endless. It curled into your mind like warm currents through cold water, carrying memories that were not yours, yet felt as though they had always been waiting inside you. You saw visions in the glow, a storm raging over a darkened sea, waves rising like mountains, then parting to reveal an ancient city, Numeris, when it was still young, its coral towers fresh and vibrant. You saw the crowned figure as a child, swimming through the same chamber where you stood now, cradling a smaller, paler version of the heart. The song shifted, deepening. Now it was no longer about history, it was about you. The threads of light wrapped tighter, pulsing with the rhythm of your heartbeat, and every pulse seemed to wash away something heavy, fear, doubt, exhaustion, until you felt almost weightless. Then, a shape emerged from the glowing sphere. At first, it was only light, but slowly it became form, a towering figure with skin like shifting water and eyes like pearls lit from within. Their hair flowed in currents that seemed to reach into every shadow of the chamber. They spoke, yet their voice was both sound and tide, felt in your bones. Bere, you have crossed the thresholds of depth, dime, and silence. But to wield the heart, you must give it your own song, your own truth. Speak, and the ocean will listen. The chamber fell silent except for the steady heartbeat of the currents. You realized the choice was yours. What you said now would not only bind you to the heart, but also shape the fate of Lumorous itself. The words that bind. The stillness in the chamber was so absolute that even the whisper of your breath felt like a wave breaking. The figure waited, neither urging nor delaying, only existing as if they were the embodiment of patience itself. Continued before you could ask. Long before the stars and sea were divided, there was a rift, a wound torn between worlds. From it came the first shadows, born of forgotten light. They were not evil, but they were hungry, so very hungry. The ocean gave them depth to hide in, and the sky gave them silence to wait in. The vision in your mind shifted. You saw the creature again, but this time, you saw it not as an intruder, but as an ancient sentinel, a remnant of a time when the seas were wilder, untamed, ruled by no law except survival. It had no malice. Only a purpose, to reclaim what was taken from the deep. The figure's hand extended toward you, palm up. It came for the heart. You have what it seeks. The water around you cooled, as if the abyss itself had exhaled. Far below, a single echoing sound rose, low, drawn out, and impossible to tell if it was a call, or a warning. You realized with a chill. The abyss was not done with you. And somewhere in that endless black, the creature was turning back toward the light. When the deep rises. The silence broke. From far below, the darkness began to move, not in a slow, drifting way, but in a surge, as though the abyss itself had decided to rise toward you. The walls of the chamber quivered, fine dust drifting from the coral arches. The light from the heart pulsed faster, brighter, as if sensing danger before your mind could fully grasp it. You turned toward the water's depths, and that's when you saw it. Not the whole creature, never the whole creature, only fragments, a curve of plated hide catching the heart's glow, a long shadowed fin slicing upward, the faint gleam of a massive, unblinking eye. The water temperature plummeted, your breath catching despite the protective shell around you. Every instinct screamed to hide, but there was nowhere to go. The chamber was too open, too exposed. The figure's voice rang in your mind, not calm this time, but sharp and urgent. Do not run. Running makes you prey. The shadow circled, slow at first, then tighter, faster. The chamber's light dimmed under its bulk each time it passed. It was studying you, measuring the distance, the way a predator tests the edge of a trap. Then, without warning, it struck. The water erupted in a blast of force as the creature's massive head pushed into view, teeth like shards of moonlight flashing in the dark. You braced for impact, but instead, it stopped, mere inches from you. Its eye, vast and ancient, locked with yours. The world fell away. In that gaze, you saw storms older than the land, the crushing weight of the deep, and the loneliness of endless watchfulness. It did not speak, yet you understood. It had been waiting, not for you, but for the heart you carried. And now, it had found it. The water trembled around you as its mouth began to open again, this time, not to look, but to take the claim of the abyss. The chamber was no longer a place of wonder, it had become a battlefield. The heart in your grasp throbbed like a living thing, its light spilling into the water in rapid, desperate pulses. Each beat seemed to draw the creature closer, as though it were tethered to this strange relic by an invisible chain. Its mouth opened wider, rows upon rows of jagged teeth vanishing into the shadows of its throat. The water pulled toward it in a slow, spiraling current, dragging your body with it. You braced your feet against the coral floor, but the force was relentless, the pull growing stronger with each passing second. The figure's voice sliced through the panic in your mind. It does not hunger for you. It hungers for what you carry. The heart is not a treasure, it is a promise it believes was broken. Your grip tightened around the relic. A promise? What could an ancient abyssal predator possibly want with something so small, so delicate? The water's pressure shifted suddenly, and the creature lunged, not to bite, but to push. The movement was so fast you barely saw it, only felt the shockwave slam into you like a wall. You tumbled backward, your hand nearly losing its hold on the heart. The glow dimmed for a fraction of a second. The creature hesitated. It could take it, but it didn't. Instead, it began to circle you again, slower this time, its massive body weaving between the coral pillars. The figure appeared in your peripheral vision, her form wavering like heat through water. You cannot let it touch the heart. If it does, the deep will rise, and everything will drown. The criature's eye locked onto yours again, and a flicker of something passed through it, recognition, and rage. Your surroundings began to change. The coral shivered and curled inward, sealing exits. The walls darkened until the chamber was little more than a hollow sphere suspended in an endless black void. You realized with a chill, this was no longer a physical place. The creature had pulled you into its domain, a mind space born of salt, hunger, and eternity. In this place, escape was impossible. Here, the abyss made the rules. The heart pulsed again, harder, and this time a thread of golden light lanced outward from it, striking the criature's hide. The beast recoiled, not in pain, but in fury. The chamber shook with the soundless echo of its roar. The figure stepped closer, her voice trembling for the first time. It has marked you now. From this moment, no depth will be safe. The water began to churn, and you felt the heart grow heavier in your hands. The creature lowered its head, readying for one final strike. This time, you knew, it would not stop inches away.